The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. On June 26th, Gavin Dew posted disappointing news on his LinkedIn profile. After 4 years of planning, fundraising, and negotiation with the city of Abbotsford, the Tech District project was pulling the plug. Dew says, "We couldn't keep spending money and time without a clear signal from City Council that this $5 billion private investment project would be approved." Dew said, "I know a lot of people are disappointed. I'm proud of the work we did to develop the project vision, invite people in, and build community support, and I'm obviously disappointed at this lost opportunity to deliver affordable housing, high-quality education, and a hub for food innovation in Canada's most productive agricultural jurisdiction." Dew went on to say, "The lack of a clear signal from the City Council is indicative of a crisis of indecision in Canada. We have become the land of the slow maybe, where process has become an end in itself, decisions are elusive, and leaders refuse to lead." I invited Gavin Dew to join me for a conversation that matters about our inability to get to yes and what it's doing to our reputation as a place to innovate and grow. Gavin, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Stu.
You're disappointed, aren't you?
A little bit, yeah.
Oh, don't downplay it. I know you're severely disappointed. You put a tremendous amount of energy into developing this. Give us a sense of what the process has been like that has led to this frustration.
You bet, Stu. So, let's start with why even do this to begin with. And the reason why is that agricultural technology, food innovation, these are huge opportunities for our economy. And they're really important for the world. If you eat food, this stuff matters for you. When you think about the very evolution of human society, it starts with becoming more efficient at producing food.
Exactly.
Many, many centuries ago, our forebears took almost 100% of their available labor time to produce food. And as we became more efficient, we drove that down to the point where North American food production takes a couple percentage points of all of our labor. That makes us available to do governance, to build societies, to do art, to do other business. So food is really, really important. And the Fraser Valley in British Columbia produces half the food in BC.
Which, by the way, we only produce about 34% of the food that we need. So we need to increase production. There's no doubt about it.
Exactly. So there's huge opportunity to increase production to support our own food security. There's also, a world that is changing around us. You have climate change, you have geopolitical changes in places like Ukraine, which is a breadbasket of Europe. You have all of this change happening within which Canada has the opportunity to punch above its weight, because we're actually one of the most sustainable food producers in the world, which we don't brag about anywhere near enough. So we have this opportunity to grab agri-tech, to take it and to say, here in BC, we want to do this. Here in Abbotsford, in the Fraser Valley, the most productive agricultural jurisdiction in Canada, let's do this. And we built a project concept around achieving exactly that.
So Robert Sake, in his book, Agriculture 5.0, says, agriculture is the oldest industry in the world with the greatest amount of innovation potential. So why was it important to develop an innovation center around food production?
Well, you make such a fantastic point, and I always try to define agri-tech for people, because people often think agri-tech is some new, shiny, novel thing we're starting to do now. So the plow is agri-tech, fertilizer is agri-tech, the tractor is agri-tech, any irrigation is agri-tech. It's about finding that next incremental innovation, some of which might be brand new technologies, and some of which might be diffusing those innovations into existing agricultural and other forms of food production. So why is it important? It's important because we have that opportunity to make the Fraser Valley a beacon. We don't actually have here in British Columbia an equivalent to the University of Guelph in Ontario, which is the leading agricultural jurisdiction in Canada. We should have a Guelph of the West, and I would argue that should be the role of the University of the Fraser Valley. So we partnered with the University of the Fraser Valley as our core academic partner. We built out a plan around a $50 million innovation hub. We worked very closely with them and supported some of the work that they were doing in order to try to create a place where innovators and entrepreneurs could come together for commercialization, education, innovation, all the things that will drive a more innovative food economy in BC. And we intended to wrap around that a complete community with a large amount of affordable housing, jobs, high quality education, all the things that everybody says they want. And in actual fact, we did opinion research 6 or 7 times over the course of 4 years. Where we ended up was that 93% of people in Abbotsford who had an opinion on the project were supportive, and virtually every stakeholder was on side. Every MLA from every party was on side. Everybody was saying, let's do this. Heck, half the city thought it was already approved and being built. But unfortunately, we just hit a point where we couldn't keep going in circles.
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. So what happened? How could you run into, as you point out, the process of getting to the slow maybe?
You know, I think it's a small story, but it's indicative of a bigger problem, which is that we found ourselves just going in circles. We would go into one process with the city where they would say, okay, the only way we can consider your concept is if you submit it through this neighborhood plan process. But then they'd ignore our input. And then we'd go, okay, so should we go in through an official community plan amendment? We'd go in through that process and we'd get railroaded. Then we'd go in through another process. And what I found so bizarre about the whole thing is that we got to the end of the process. You know, this culminated in us telling staff, telling council, and telling them in writing before they went into a meeting, we can't keep going in circles. We need a really clear signal from you that you actually want this. And that doesn't mean you're going to sign the bottom of a blank piece of paper and say you can do whatever you want. It means we need you to come to the table to help shape and steer this to make sure it's going to be something that works for the community, that creates benefit for all of Abbotsford and all of the region. We just need you to come to the table. And unfortunately, they just couldn't seem to get their heads around it. So we showed up to a council meeting where councillors knew or should have known full well that the choice was either we're moving forward or we're not. And they voted for a staff recommendation that killed the project.
Staff recommendation is saying we're putting it off on somebody else. Yeah.
It's staff pointing their fingers at council pointing their fingers at staff, and nobody willing to lead. And what was truly, truly mind-blowing about the whole thing, Stu, is that a week after this had happened, there were still councillors telling local stakeholders that there was a path forward for the project because they didn't seem to understand they'd voted to kill it. And by that time, other municipalities were reaching out and saying, okay, well, seems like it's dead there. We actually want to get stuff done. Why don't you come see us?
So do you think there is a path forward, but somewhere else?
I think there very well could be. I mean, to me, it's an idea whose time has come. We have such a huge opportunity around food innovation. It's just so natural. There's so much momentum. There's so much interest. Something like this is going to happen somewhere. Hopefully in BC, maybe in Alberta, but probably not in Abbotsford.
Well, that's such disappointing news.
Yeah.
Peter Dillon, who had been on the Food Security Task Force a couple of years ago with Lenore Newman, they put together this fabulous report that talked about how we can help to ensure that we can secure our food supply in British Columbia.
We were inspired directly by that report. We were working very closely with Lenore. And the irony is, provinces across Canada have looked at that report, taken inspiration from it, adapted it to their own use, and the only place it's not actually being implemented is here in British Columbia, where the taxpayer paid for us to create this report, which was a unifying idea. It was a unifying narrative. It inspired our entire approach. And yet here we are. That report came out almost 5 years ago now. And really nothing's happened of any material consequence on it. There's been some tiny, some Band-Aids applied to the shotgun wound, but nothing's really happening.
Well, Peter says that he goes, because he also has interest in Quebec, and they go, this is a great report. We implemented it and it's making a big difference. Why do we drag our feet here in British Columbia? What is it? And this sort of digs into what's happened with the, I want to almost say the implementation of the precautionary principle, where, you can create a reason why not to do it because it's not 100% guaranteed that it's going to work out the way that you might envision it. And so you can stop anything by applying that so-called precautionary principle.
Yeah, I think we have a culture problem. I think it's a Canadian problem, but it's a particularly British Columbian problem where we are stuck in a crisis of indecision, where we've transitioned almost from being a country with a can-do attitude, a country of problem solvers, to being a nation of naysayers, where instead of thinking, what can we do? What's possible? How do we get this done? We're constantly looking over our shoulders, trying to figure out who's going to be offended or who might not like it. And in so doing, I think we've created conditions where, almost nobody in their right mind would choose to invest here when they're given the choice between different risk profiles.
So the challenge and the problem with adopting that principle of no can do, based out of the idea that, we want to preserve what we've got, we don't want to put it at risk. Well, there is no stasis. Either you're moving forward or you're moving back. And if you're not moving forward, you've got no way to go other than retreating. And you're sending signals to people who may want to come and invest here. Don't bother.
Well, we are retreating. When you actually look at our quality of life, when you look at our per capita GDP, we've been flat for 20 years, and now we're actually regressing.
Since 2019, I believe.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
The standard of living for people in Canada is actually diminishing. So people are going to be worse off than their parents were if we don't start doing stuff. And I think that that's two things. Number one is we've made it so incredibly difficult to do anything on the land base that it takes forever and ever. Look at the Trans Mountain Expansion Project, which I worked on as an example. In 1952, with the technology of 1952, a project was brought from concept to completion in 18 months for $93 million. That's $1 billion today.
Yeah.
It took 10 years and $34 billion to duplicate the same project. That's absolutely insane. That's 5, 6, however many times over the budget that it should have been. When you look at the British Columbia economy, we depend heavily on major projects in order to support our economy. We'd actually be in significantly negative territory if we didn't have the major projects that have come to fruition over the last number of years. But if we didn't create these exaggerated delays and uncertainties and risks and added costs layered on top, we probably could have built 5 times as much stuff.
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. The volume of voices against the expansion of the Trans Mountain Pipeline was incredible, and that drove up the cost. And the application of the precautionary principle was on full display there. But. And still, you had people who fought their way through to make it happen. Bizarrely enough, without Trudeau actually taking it over, it probably wouldn't have got done.
What kind of signal does that send to international capital markets when we have to nationalize 1,000 kilometers of pipeline in a country that already had 800,000? That's what's absurd about it.
So, but then you read, they only finished it and started pumping oil through the new line just a matter of months ago, and already Trans Mountain itself is outperforming the BC economy.
Yeah.
But no, the naysayers were all saying they're never going to recover the investment. They'll recover the investment. Oddly enough, it will be a great investment for the government of Canada, the same way saving Hibernia was. But we're in this mindset that, no, you can't do this. So to your point, what's the signal that it is sending? I mean, you said international investors. So let's take a look at what's in the pipeline in the National Energy Board's approval process. Virtually nothing.
Not much. We have very little in the way of major projects to take the place of the projects that have been propping up our economy. That's a worry when it comes to major infrastructure on the land base. The equal issue is the signal that we're sending to young, creative people who are going to create something. They're going to build something because they can't help it, because it's in their DNA. They want to do something, but they can do it anywhere in the world, Stu.
Yes.
So when you put them into a position where you're saying, whether it be through affordability issues, whether it be through taxation, whether it be just through the dampening signal that's being sent through the culture of naysaying that's emerged here, we're saying, look, go do it somewhere else. And when you've created that new company, hire some people there. Maybe call up your smart friends here and hire them to go move to Austin, Texas, to go move to Calgary, to go move to somewhere where they actually believe in getting stuff done. So I do think we have to have a fundamental conversation in BC about where we go from here. Because if we don't start getting shit done again, our province is going to continue to atrophy economically, and we're going to be at the point where everybody who had the potential to build something new has left.
Well, the carry-on effect of that is when these companies or innovators go somewhere else, we don't get them back. We don't get the people they took with them back. We don't get the companies that would attach around them ever to even start here. We're creating a void that could take generations to refill. So how do we create that dialogue so that it becomes important to the average British Columbia? Because I don't quite understand why it's not on people's radar.
You know, it's a really tough question, Stu. I think part of the reason why is that we've had a staleness to our political discourse in British Columbia. We actually had for a long time the oldest legislature in British Columbia. And we had this, I think especially for folks coming from the pro-business side, we had this mistaken belief that young people weren't entrepreneurial and pro-business. While across the country, you know, Doug Ford and at the time Jason Kenney had the youngest provincial caucuses in British Columbia. And here in BC, we basically created an environment where the next generation of entrepreneurs and business people and young people that should have and could have been defining the policy environment in British Columbia haven't been at the table.
Yeah. You know, you've seen the numbers of the people who are what Ernest Lang calls members of the productivity class. Mm-hmm. They're leaving Canada. More than 125,000 last year. This is indicative of this same indecision, inability to lead, lack of focus. And so I'm concerned about what it means. And so where do we go from here? How do we start to build that dialogue that gets people to pay more attention to it?
I think we have to start having really serious leadership conversations around how we send that cultural signal, because politics is downstream from culture and policy is downstream from politics. So if we start having a really serious conversation about the fact that there is a problem that needs to be addressed, I think that's really important. Because you hear, I mean, I was at an event recently where the Premier was quoting some pretty out of context numbers to make the case that everything's okay because there are people coming to BC. Okay, well, we're also shedding thousands of people who are going elsewhere to build things. And if we're losing the productivity class, if we're losing the people that were going to create the future of our economy and they're being replaced by students and temporary foreign workers, I don't think that's a durable economic plan for a province or for a country. So we have to figure out how we grab those leaders and pull them back in and signal to them that we're going to be a province where we get stuff done again.
But we also, I think, need to have some influence on immigration policy. Not to say, no, you can't come here.
No.
But what you need to be doing is helping to identify the people that are required to fill the technology gaps, the exactly. labor force gaps, so that when they arrive here, there is that kind of employment. But I also think, so many people who come as immigrants have a built-in entrepreneurial spirit, and we need to encourage that. But try and get a small business started in British Columbia, next to impossible.
It's just so difficult. You're absolutely right, Stu. What we need to be doing is grabbing the best and the brightest. We have an amazing place here where we can be starting things, but we're losing too many people. We've got too many people who are coming here as a way station on the way to their ultimate goal in the States. Wow. We've got, just too much lost opportunity because people want to be here, but if they can't afford to be here, they can't afford to start a company here. And if they can't start a company here, then they can't build here. If they can't get a job here, they can't be inspired and meet colleagues and form networks and do all the things that we want them to do. So we just have to figure out, how do we welcome people to stay here, whether they were born and raised here or whether they just got here, and encourage them to be part of building a stronger economy here.
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. Where do you go now with the tech district? I know that you said that there are other jurisdictions that have said, well, hang on a second, we want to talk to you. But how do you maintain the energy and drive to say, yeah, okay, I'm willing to go down this path again, I think, with your sister city right next door. Like, where do you get the energy to consider that rather than go, well, I hear Alberta's calling?
A lot of coffee. No,
Yeah.
I'm kidding a little bit, but I think that in order to do the kind of work that I try to do, which is largely trying to get major projects done, you have to be simultaneously very patient and very impatient. And you have to be willing to just keep on pushing until you actually can get something done. So what's been gratifying over the last couple of weeks is, again, the number of phone calls from people saying, okay, look, if they don't want it, we do. And if they're not prepared to establish clear investment conditions, we are, so let's talk. So I do think there's some opportunity there. I don't know exactly what that looks like. I don't know if I have a role to play in it, but trying to help steer that in the right direction so we don't lose this opportunity, I think is really important.
But it's tough. And without a clear signal to move forward, you still need to have something internally that drives you, because it's not being offered to you with an easy path. Where do you find that drive?
I believe in this country. I believe in this province. I think that the only way that things get better is if you make them better. And the only way that you make them better is by doing things. So fundamentally, I think you just have to have that drive. That's what it is to be an entrepreneur, Stu. That's to be an entrepreneur. Starting a business is like having a child. It's an act of faith that the future will be better than the past. You have to fundamentally believe that the future will be better, or that you could make it better by doing your small part.
And you got to work hard.
You do.
You really have to work hard.
Yeah, you have to. Well, you have to. You know, if you like what you do, somebody said, if you like what you're doing, then you'll never work a day in your life. I think that that's not always the case for entrepreneurs. You're going to have tough days, and you're gonna take some punches to the face. But you just have to have that persistence. And again, that comes back to what is in our cultural DNA as a country. Because you think about this country that we have that is forged out of pretty difficult circumstances.
We're a northern climate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You think about the amazing nation that we've built. You think about the builders of this country, and they weren't that awfully worried that somebody might be opposed. That had its downside consequences. There were some bad things that happened. But at the same time, this country was built on a can-do attitude, built on being a nation of problem solvers, built on being a nation with a can-do attitude. And I think we have to figure out how to get that back again.
Did we have a little bit too much success and got a bit soft?
Maybe I think we started to rest on our laurels. I was talking to somebody today as I was driving through downtown Vancouver, and we were talking about just the challenges that Vancouver faced. And I was thinking to myself, here I am, and I'm admiring the view of the mountains from a traffic jam. We have rested on our laurels. We have been very comfortable with the fact that, people will come here because we have this beautiful place with this beautiful nature. And yes, they will come here, but will they come here to spend money, or will they come here to make money? Because we need people to come here to make money. We need them to have the belief that coming here is a great environment to invest, to build, to grow, to employ themselves, employ their families, employ other people. If we can bring that signal back again, which I think we've lost a step on, then I think we have a real opportunity. But otherwise, as you say, Alberta is calling.
Well, the message here right now, and I hear it, and it seems to be growing because I think it resonates with a certain number of people, is, your success, I'm not sure that you got there legitimately. Oh, your success, you're a fat cat. You're the people that we want to tax. We don't want to celebrate you. We actually want to rail against you. How do we attract those people to come here or to stay, if that's the mindset? And so maybe we have to start there. Appreciating.
I think we have to valorize the entrepreneur and the small business owner. We have to bring back a belief that building a small business is honorable. We have to bring back belief that people are entrepreneurs because they believe in the community that they live in. They want to make it better. They want to serve the people. And I think that's something we definitely don't do enough of. I was in Alberta a month ago, and the shift in tone was quite measurable. You walk into a room and there's a conversation that is all about how can we help you be successful? Because if you are successful, you will create opportunity for others. And I think there is really kind of a cultural dimension happening there where I think we have, to your point, we've become we become reluctant to celebrate success. We've become afraid of acknowledging success, and we've become preoccupied with finding wedge issues to fight about when we could be focusing on the things that unify us and that actually get things done and make things better for people.
Well, create jobs, generate taxes, and support the programs that we cherish the most.
And if you have all those things, then you have the luxury of choice. You have the luxury of freedom. You have the luxury of the opportunity to debate about issues that might be divisive. But it's like we've got the pyramid upside down. We're spending all of our time debating the things that you're able to debate when you've taken care of the fundamentals. But we've got to get back to taking care of those first.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you, Gavin, for coming in and sharing your thoughts. And unfortunately, your disappointment right now about the status of the Abbotsford Tech District, but I appreciate your drive and determination to say, we'll find another way. And that is the entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah, I choose to be wildly optimistic. And I think that's the choice you have to make as an entrepreneur or as a person trying to get things done. You have to believe there's always a silver lining.
Oh, well, I got to add one bit to that. You know, many times people will say, oh, you're an optimist, you must be naive. I actually have a completely different view of that. An optimist is someone who fully appreciates all of the challenges and says, I still believe that I can get it done. That's not being naive. I think that's the spirit and drive that we need to be able to create a better province. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Stu.